Now this is something different, but then the device in question, the Gemini from Planet Computers, is different. Is it a smartphone? Is it PDA? Is it a mini laptop? Yes, all of the above. Now, back in the 1990s, before the age of the mobile internet, the Psion Palm Tops ruled the world. Genuinely groundbreaking pocket computers, and the most functional of all was this, the Series 5 range, with miraculously unfolding, full travel QWERTY keyboard. Back then, this was my and others' mobile computing world, with basic email databases, spreadsheets, calendars, and more. We really knew how to party in those days. Actually, there were games as well, not least through the 3lib shareware library, which is where I started and from which evolved my career. Now, Martin Ridderford, who designed the Psion Series 5, is still around, and he, with Planet Computers, decided the time was right for another crack at the same form factor in 2018. And the thing is, they could well be right. Smartphones nowadays are sealed glass monoblocks and, if we're honest, a bit boring and limited in terms of text input and professional ambitions. Yes, your iPhone 10 takes great photos and is good for gaming. Yes, your Samsung Galaxy S8 is brilliant for Facebook and Instagram and so on. But what if your idea of a mobile experience is getting things done? You know, the P word, productivity. Making the most of your time when mobile to save yourself time when back home or when at the office. It's a compelling idea. Whereas you might scan email headers on mobile and dash off a one-line reply to something, what if you could actually type in a proper reply? Now, swipe typing and predictive input are excellent. I use them every day, but you never really escape the feeling that you're struggling to do something that would be easier if you were just sat at your laptop or desktop. So when you get a few minutes downtime, or perhaps in a crowded train or waiting in a queue, by flipping open the Gemini here, you get a full screen, full keyboard experience, and there's a feeling that you're doing more than keeping an eye on your online world. You're actually interacting with it properly. Whether you're sat down typing with several fingers or using 2 thumbs, you're productive. So it's not about raw typing speed. I suspect the fastest gesture-based input, that's Google's Gboard, Microsoft's Wordflow, they're faster than typing on this real keyboard, but that's not the point. The Gemini is about an intention to get things done. So we have the guts of a modern Android smartphone. There's a Wi-Fi option as well as a full LTE variant shown here. An 18:9 6-inch 1080p display with capacitive touch, a Deca-core MediaTek X25 X27 processor with 4GB of RAM, 64GB of storage plus micro SD expansion, Wi-Fi to AC stereo speakers, a 3.5mm audio jack here, twin USB Type-C connectors, one on either side, with USB on the go and an expansion hub with full USB-A ports, a 4220 mAh battery. Wow! All of this is somehow mounted in this clamshell form factor, 1.3 centimeters thick and 400 grams, with the two halves hinged together, but with the hinge and gap protected at the back by a flexible steel cover which folds smartly down, and also prop up the Gemini on a flat surface for an angled typing experience, and with the contact point then another inch or so further back than the closed device would have suggested, meaning that when you tap the display to do something, the device doesn't tip over. Very clever. Then there's the keyboard. It was the biggest unique selling point of the Psion Series 5, and it's probably the biggest attraction here. Your fingers are light on the keys and you want to type, you want to get involved with what's on screen, whether it's social media or a business collaboration of some kind. The whole experience brings back so many memories of the original Psions, yet with all the advantages of a modern Android smartphone. The interface here is very stock, with just optimizations for the solely landscape orientation and for the launcher shortcuts. It's almost a given that some third-party applications and games will get confused by being launched from and running in landscape mode, but I don't expect the typical Gemini buyer to be pushing the boundaries in terms of hundreds of applications and games. This comes with most things you might need. You'll be using this 64GB of storage mainly for offline documents and offline maps, but it's more than enough. And then the expansion card for some videos to entertain quiet moments, or for your music collection, that sort of thing. But I can't emphasize enough that this device is just as happy being online as being offline, in contrast to the original Psions, whether on Wi-Fi only or, as I suspect most people will go, with the full cellular radios. And with the latter, the Gemini is a full smartphone and can in principle be your primary phone, the only device in your pocket. But the Gemini will be closed, surely, you'll say, with tough aluminium and steel exterior and the screen tucked away. So how would you take phone calls? Now, using a system of LEDs and a multifunction button on the right edge. Essentially, the LEDs flash and animate to let you know what's incoming. So a particular color sequence means it's the wife, another one means your boss is calling, and so on. And pressing the button picks up the call. So which way round do you hold the Gemini to take a call? It doesn't matter. There are speakers and microphones at both ends, and the device's sensors obviously know which way you're holding it. You just pick up and talk. Obviously, for other notifications and other incomings, you'd open up the Gemini and deal with them using the full screen and keyboard. The multifunction button also acts as a way to talk to Google Assistant while the device is closed, so you don't always have to open it right up. Very nice. One side note on the OS used here is that there are also options to reconfigure this to dual boot into various Linux distros or even Sailfish OS. Remember that? But that's a geeky story for another day. All initial Gemini owners will be using Android, I'm sure, and it's 7.1 with the November 27 security patches here. Their newer unit should be even more up-to-date out of the box. And there's the usual promise of frequent security updates through the next 2 years. You'll notice I haven't mentioned cameras. There's an inward-facing 5-megapixel camera for video call use. If you want to take rear-facing photos, then there's an optional clip-on module shown here. This is perhaps the biggest compromise of having such a sleek clamshell. There's just no room, no thickness for a traditional phone camera. There are other compromises too. The stereo speakers in the display section are necessarily tinny because there's simply no room for a chamber around each component. Then there's the weight, 400 grams. It's sleek and light really for something which might almost be a laptop replacement. And here's the Gemini compared to the very, very chunky Scion Series 5. But this is still double the weight of any conventional smartphone. I can't emphasize enough that this isn't a full, exhaustive review. Of course, the Gemini is so different from anything we've seen before for, well, decades, that it deserves a long-term test, months in daily rotation and several OS updates before anyone can really reach a definite recommendation. In the meantime, it's not that easy to buy either. The Indiegogo page is still the place to get started, but the various earliest backers from the start of 2017 are only just now starting to receive production Geminis. It'll be a few months before the 4,000 or so backers have all been serviced, so we're not talking of a device that you can buy in your local tech mart. The eventual retail price will be in the £500 region for the Wi-Fi plus 4G model, though an exact figure isn't yet available. Interestingly, £500 will be the exact same pricing level as the Scion Series 5 was 20 years ago, not allowing for inflation, of course. And about right, though those who bought into the Gemini in February 2017 on early bird pricing are getting an absolute steal. But the hunt, the wait is worth it. The Gemini is not the perfect phone for the man in the street, it's true. It's alien like nothing most under 30s will ever have seen. But if you, like me, felt your heart skip a beat when the Gemini unfolds and perches itself in front of you ready for action, then this is very definitely the productivity booster you've been waiting for.